Joining us now, our good friend, he's the treasurer of the state of Oregon, Ted Wheeler. Ted, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Carl and Paul. Thanks so much for having me on.
You know, Gary and I were at our financial advisor this week. Do you get periodic reports on how much the state has in the bank, what's its solvency, the bond ratings, all of that? Do you get regular updates about that?
I get all of that information through a fire hose on a regular basis for all $72 billion of the investments we manage. Mm-hmm. Plus, I meet regularly with our banking officers on the transactions that we run through. And I also meet on a regular basis with our bonding experts on the credit rating. So that's all information that we look at on a regular basis.
Good to know. Good to know that you're on top of that. Ted, one of the things we talked about on this show continually since the economic meltdown is how we feel that the Wall Street got deregulated. Common sense regulations weren't there. This casino on Wall Street, economy on Wall Street took us over the cliff. The big banks got bailed out, and yet those same big banks are not lending as they should. And we have a goal, and I know you share it, of making additional capital available to help Oregon businesses, communities, and especially small businesses in this state.
That's right, Carl. I've been all over the state, and that's a commonality that you're going to hear from Maupin to Medford to Brineville to Pendleton. There is clearly a lack of availability of credit financing in Oregon, not just for small businesses, but also for farms and also for families. And we're looking at a way to solve that. This whole conversation really was brought to the fore by the Working Families Party during the last election cycle, and they proposed that we look at the North Dakota model, the state bank that exists there. It's a state-run bank in North Dakota. It provides student loan guarantees. It also provides both direct loans and some loan participation. And so I've had a chance to look at that. I've spoken with a number of people that I think would represent the key stakeholders that have to reach a consensus to move something through the legislature. And I have come to the conclusion that it would actually be a mistake for us to import lock, stock, and barrel the North Dakota model to Oregon. Instead, what I'm proposing is that we should follow our own path and take a look at the assets we have in place currently and also the tools that we need to address Oregon's problem.
Right, and you've written I believe, an op-ed in the Oregonian recently about this, in which you call it a virtual state bank. In North Dakota, it really is the state of North Dakota doing business as the Bank of North Dakota, basically.
That's exactly right. They had a very different history. When they created their model 90 years ago, they had a complete lack of lending institutions. They didn't have protection for their farmers who had financial disasters when their crops were wiped out by the harsh North Dakota winters. And they didn't have a Federal Reserve branch, so they needed some mechanism to clear checks for their lending institutions. So they set about creating their own bricks-and-mortar institution. It has hundreds of employees. It has a headquarters in Bismarck. 90 years has passed since then, and Oregon developed in a very different way. We have a large network of community banks and credit unions. We have 31. We also have clearinghouse. We have financial tools in place here in the state of Oregon for economic development. The problem is, and what I'm trying to address in this framework that I've laid out, is that those tools are very fragmented. There's no overarching strategy. There's no sense of prioritization. There's a lack of coordination and alignment, both between the public sector tools, the different lending mechanisms and incentive programs and grant programs and direct investment programs we have in state agencies, and coordination with the private sector. One of the things that North Dakota is significantly known for in today's market is something that's a little arcane and a little tough at 7:10 in the morning, but it's called loan participation.
Right.
They would actually help private sector institutions make loans to small businesses and farmers. And that's something that we could do more significantly here in the state of Oregon. We could be, for example, if somebody goes to a bank, say in Mill City, where they have one bank branch of U.S. Bank, and the bank can do 80% of what a small business needs to grow and expand, but they can't quite close the deal.
Right.
The state of Oregon has the resources to come in as a participant and provide the last 20% to close that deal.
They have the leverage to do it.
And the knowledge of the local community.
So let me recap. We're talking to Oregon State Treasurer Ted Wheeler, his plans for what he calls a virtual state bank. That you're saying that, of course, we want to get more capital into the hands of Oregon businesses, communities, farmers, people.
Absolutely.
And your plan would serve as a complement, not a competitor, to our existing system of community banks, which we want to support in our credit unions, through credit enhancement programs, right?
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
We have the first step is to really bring all the tools that exist in the disparate state agencies under one roof and one strategic framework. For example,
which is just efficiency, which we're looking at.
Absolutely.
Right.
This is really where progressive values meets smart business practices. So bring them under one roof, align those tools, have some means of measuring our success, and make sure that we're coordinated and working with and leveraging the resources that are currently available in the private sector. What's unique about this as an Oregon model is we have the banks and the credit unions on board with this framework.
You're just going to run this through the existing state infrastructure.
Exactly.
Right.
We're going to have to bring some new tools on board. We're looking at a revolving loan program. We're working with some of the labor leaders to create what's called an infrastructure bank. And that's still in its early stages, but there are ways that we could use state resources to invest in critical infrastructure here in the state of Oregon, whether it's educational institutions or research and development facilities or core infrastructure like roads and bridges and port facilities. We have an opportunity here to invest in our future economy, and we shouldn't let it pass.
Right. Our guest is Oregon State Treasurer Ted Wheeler. Ted, what has been the response from the legislature on this?
So far, very positive, and I want to acknowledge that we have a number of legislators, including Phil Barnhart and Representative Jensen, who have actually introduced bills that could be the framework that we build on. I had a meeting in my office yesterday that included the banks, the credit unions, Republicans, Democrats, members of the Working Families Party, and I believe we have a consensus on this framework.
Right.
Now, it's going to take quite an effort to fill out all the specifics of this proposal. What we want to do is just agree on the framework, get it through the legislature with the authority to continue working on it, and then build this institution here in the state of Oregon. It won't be bricks and mortar. It'll be pulling together the tools we have in a way that makes more sense.
But you envision it as a trailblazing 21st century solution or bank, virtual state bank, as, you know, in pioneering as what happened in 1919 in North Dakota.
I think this is as big, and for Oregon it's huge, because this would be the first time that we really pull together all of our job creation resources and have them targeted in the same direction under one unified strategy with a clear sense of priorities, and then measure our progress as we go. We'll be able to report back to the public how we're actually doing.
All right, here's the big question. We have 30 members of the state Senate, 60 members of the House. Since we're talking about the legislature, which one of those could give you a good run for your money in the Ironman competition? Who would come in second, Ted?
You know, honestly, given how hard I've been working and how little I've been working out, I think I would be struggling to keep up with any of them at this point.
Well, that's a good sign for the state of Oregon, then.
I hope so.
All right, Ted. Thanks a lot. Our Oregon State Treasurer, Ted Wheeler. Ted, we'll have you back on as this proceeds.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, thank you. And it's good to know we have money in the bank in Oregon.